everyone. I'm Jill Kagan with the Arch National Respite Network and Resource Center. In just a minute, I am going to turn it over to our wonderful web platform facilitator, Emily Turner, who will provide a quick overview of the platform. But before we get started, I just had a couple of announcements. And many of you already know this, but I did want to announce that we have a date and location for the next National Lifespan Respite Conference. We're very pleased and excited to be co-hosting with the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition and the New York State Office for the Aging. It will be held in Buffalo, New York, right on the waterfront and within driving distance of Niagara Falls. The dates are beginning with a reception for grantees on April 29th and the Lifespan Respite Grantee and Learning and Partner Learning Symposium on April 30th, with the conference starting the evening of April 30th and extending through May 2nd. We are expecting to circulate the call for presentations probably sometime in late June. And for those of you who are wondering why we moved the conference from our regularly scheduled time in the fall to the spring, is that we really wanted everyone to have the opportunity to attend the International Respite Conference that's going to be held in Iceland in October. This is really always an amazing experience, and if you can manage it, we really would encourage you to attend that event. There's information about the International Conference that appeared in the last few issues of Arch Quick News Update. So you can peruse the Arch website to take a look at the archived newsletters. To familiarize you with the workings of this webinar platform, and the webinar today is No Wrong Door and Lifespan Respite, the shared vision of connecting individuals and families to services and supporting family caregivers. It's a mouthful for a title. I'm going to turn it over to Emily now, and she's going to introduce you to Victoria Wright, who is the Federal Project Officer for the Lifespan Respite Care Program. We are always very appreciative and grateful for Victoria's commitment to the program and her accessibility to all of us to provide support and guidance. Victoria, if you have some welcoming remarks, that would be great. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. I'm very excited to have Joseph Lugo joining us to talk about the ADRC No Wrong Door, the program that he leads, as we all know, Lifespan Respite Act defines lifespan respite care as a coordinated system of accessible community-based respite care service for family caregivers of children and adults with special need. Additionally, funding opportunity that state lifespan respite care brings together an array of service and program, and in collaboration with the State Aging and Disability Resource Center, No Wrong Door System, help caregivers access these services. The expectation is for state to partner and collaborate with the ADRC No Wrong Door to ensure a coordinated system exists and is sustainable. Today's webinar is a great opportunity to think about your state's lifespan respite program and how your state can further enhance or create a partnership and collaborate with the ADRC No Wrong Door. If your state already has a robust program, please think about what else you can do to improve easy access to respite for your caregivers. I would like to thank my colleague Joseph Lugo again and the two states who graciously volunteered to talk about their experiences, challenges with their programs. That'll be Cheyenne from Nevada, Jennifer, Tiana, and Doris from New York. Please take this opportunity to ask questions you might have about ADRC and No Wrong Door. And as always, thank you all for your work with the Lifespan Respite program. Back to you, Jill.
Well, thank you very much, Victoria. Victoria has already said most of what I was going to say, so I think we'll move right on to our speakers. As she said, we're going to start off with Joseph Lugo and then move into hearing from Cheyenne with Nevada and then the New York team. So let's move ahead. Again, please feel free to type in your questions into the chat box as you think of them, but we're probably going to wait and hold all questions until all the speakers have completed their presentations. If we don't get to your questions today, don't worry. We'll respond to them via email after the webinar. And I am extremely delighted to welcome all of you to the webinar today. And again, a very special thank you to all of our presenters for taking time from their busy schedules to share this information with us. So Joseph, I'll turn it over to you to begin.
Thank you very much, Jill. And just also, on a personal note, just thanks for your patience in terms of the changing slide deck. I do apologize, but you've been very kind. And thank you, everyone, for being on this call. My hope, really, is that the next time you hear or someone asks you, are you partnering with your ADRC or No Wrong Door, that after this presentation, you think of that question a little bit differently. And so that's my goal. It gives you at least a different perspective on how that can be achieved. In terms of a game plan, I'll quickly, in terms of the agenda on the next slide, I want to kind of talk about the shared themes that cut across the programs. Then I'd like to really dive into some opportunities for collaboration, really how does it work, how to make it work. And then I think the exciting part, we got to do prep work with the states, New York and Nevada, so I'm excited to hear their presentation, and I'm so glad that they're on. And then we'll open up to Q&A. So that's the game plan in terms of what's going to go on. So I'll start off with the kind of common themes. We'll start there. So before I think we jump into the how, I thought, well, does it make sense to just talk about the why? Why are we being asked to collaborate across these two different programs? And to what extent are these initiatives really aligned with each other? And the more you look into them and you start to see how states have interpreted them, the more it just makes sense. And there are a lot of examples to share, but a couple that really jumped out for me was around, first, the shared challenge in history that we both programs have. In terms of the challenge, both efforts, if we go to the next slide, I feel are trying to confront the same thing in terms of a fragmented system. I think the idea of having eligibility silos around different population or ages, I think that's something we're both trying to confront. I think both programs are working with individuals and families and caregivers in crisis situation. It's a point in an individual's life where you're most vulnerable, probably a chance where it's the least opportune time to be making these life-changing decisions, and yet we're having to do that. And so we're both working with individuals and families in those situations. And then finally, I think what we're trying to do is develop a relationship. This is rarely a one-time moment. Accessing and utilizing long-term service supports, as you can see in the last bullet, it occurs over time. And so how are we both trying to develop a relationship with an individual and families is another thing I think we share. Wanted to go to the next slide. This is a new slide, but I think so far, I think it's coming across the point. I think both the efforts that we're trying to work on, I think, is make the case on the value of caregiving and the impact it has as a country. And so I think I'm speaking to the choir, but I know everyone in this call, I think the issue of supporting families and caregivers should be at the forefront of every key decision maker at the state or national level. And this slide, to me, really captures that really well. And so it just talks about the economic impact of family caregiving. And I know many of you may already know this, but for me, it was a hard time just getting a sense of the scale. When you say the economic value of family caregiving is $470 billion, what is that equivalent to? And so if you look at the revenue, the 2017 revenue of Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google, if you're combined, so collectively the revenue of these companies is still less than the economic value that family caregiving brings. Not by much, it's like if you look at the notes, but it is still less. And to me, they started to give me a better sense of the scale of what we're trying to do. Now you may be thinking, well, why are grant dollars so small? We need bigger grant dollars. I totally agree. But I think this slide, though, did help me in that sense. And what decision maker wouldn't want this kind of economic engine in their backyard? This is a truly remarkable service that's being provided. So the next slide, you'll see an image, and this is actually the State House in Wisconsin. And I think what's another shared commonality is that both these efforts came and derived from state innovation. For ADRCs in particular, it grew out of single point of entry efforts out of Oregon, Washington, and Wisconsin. Both efforts are grassroots efforts. And so this screen is what it took to happen in Wisconsin to really help launch the ADRC effort. And so at the federal level, we've done our part, and we're trying to do more to replicate it. But both these efforts really were initiated, not at the federal level, but at the state level. The other area I just wanted to kind of share with you is this idea of a shared calling. I think an overarching commonality is I think both programs, we've been asked to serve the public in a very unique way when compared to other federal programs. For the most part, programs in the federal government ask individuals and families, what eligibility bucket do you fall into, whether it's age or disability or income. But for ADRC and No Wrong Door and Lifespan Respite, we share a mandate to try to break down these eligibility silos, and I think it's wonderful to do that. For ADRCs, it kind of started with older adults in the senior population, but the charge has always been for all populations, regardless of age, income, or disability, so it's kind of been trying to move downward. And then for respite, as you know, it really started maybe on the other end of the spectrum, more focused on children, but it also has broadened now in terms of all populations. So we've kind of met in the middle, if you will. In terms of tangible links, I think it's fortunate that the actual mandates are in writing. We can actually point to where this collaboration should occur. ADRCs are defined in both the Older Americans Act and the Lifespan Respite Care Act. And when you look at some of these items that Victoria actually mentioned before, I mean, it shows how the access function is a part of this Lifespan Respite Grantee initiative. And so, especially if you look at the required uses of fund to assist caregivers in gaining access to such services. I have a slide later on that shows different organizations in a No Wrong Door access system. And hopefully, maybe at the end of the presentation, you start to really see yourself, not just as a provider of respite, but you may not feel like a designated ARC, but you can make a good argument that you are part of a state's access system. We go to the next slide, and I wanted to just give you a couple slides in terms of the end goal of what I think both efforts are trying to do. This is a visual slide that kind of depicts the goal of an integrated long-term service and support system. And part of this is really what we've done is using partnerships, using technology to achieve these goals. But one of the outcomes of a mature ADRC No Wrong Door system is a shared infrastructure that all parties can benefit from, regardless of where an individual or provider can access. And that's one of the things we're going to focus on in the call today is tapping into this infrastructure. And so we're going to go into more detail later on in this webinar. But this is only half of the story. Sometimes states can, and even myself, just get so caught up in the infrastructure and the systems change, but that is just half the story. Really, the full story is this idea of embedding person-centered thinking and planning and practice throughout the workforce that's in an access system, and trying to get the system to try to put the individual in charge, so their interest and their goals come first, not the system. And I felt the best way, I brought a short video that I wanted you guys to see, and if you don't, for some reason you can't hear it, there's a link to it. But if we can pull that up, for me it captures really the whole story in terms of what is the goal of what a No Wrong Door is trying to do, and I think the work that you're doing as well.
Hold on one second, it logged out on me.
now it's not going to want to work for me. I was just working like an hour ago.
No, that's okay. I do presentations on occasion, and it always happens. It will. Don't worry about it. But you do have the link, and so after the presentation, I really encourage you to take a look at it. It's only 2.5 minutes of your time, but I think she does a wonderful job of capturing really the end goal, that it's the individual and the family that's at the center, and it's not the system. And so definitely check that out. So if we go to the next slide, we'll start to jump into the collaborations. There we go. And so we're going to actually go into this, but one of the things we wanted to do was do a polling question and just get a sense of where things might be. Now, we've all done polling questions, and sometimes we kind of tune out during polling questions, and they don't seem that exciting. So I thought, you know what, no, let's do this a little bit different. So the polling question is slightly different, and so I will explain it, but if you could participate, it would be great. And people are already answering, so this is fun. All right, so the question is, which of the following TV shows best describes your partnership efforts with the ADRC No Wrong Door? And so you have multiple choices. So if you feel that you are carrying the entire partnership on your own shoulders and you're really not getting much support from other people, then The Crown might be the best selection for you. It's a TV show called The Crown on Netflix. My wife loves it. And the next one too. The next one is, if you feel like the partnership with ADRC No Wrong Door is complicated, and every time you think about this relationship it makes you want to reach for a tissue, then This Is Us is the TV show that you should select. Next, if you feel that even with the very limited resources that you have, you've been able to create something out of nothing, and you've pulled this partnership off to everyone's disbelief or belief that you did it, then MacGyver would be the right TV show for you. The next is, if you feel that you are at the table, but you really had to fight and claw just to get through the bureaucracy and to stay there, then maybe Game of Thrones might be the TV show for you. The next selection is, if you feel that you really just don't know who to partner with, and every time you try to go ask who to partner with, the person changes, or the lead person, ADRC No Wrong Door, then the Doctor Who episode may be good for you. And then finally, if you feel like the ADRC No Wrong Door activities, you know it's occurring in your state, but every time you go try to inquire about it, there's just pushback in terms of this isn't really in your space, or there's really not enough time, or this isn't where you should be hanging out, then Stranger Things is maybe the TV show for you. So I'd really like you to take a moment and truly identify which of these TV shows you think best captures your current relationship in terms of partnering with ADRC No Wrong Door. So we'll give you a minute or two to answer that. So I don't know if we can close it so far. It's closed for voting. And so it appears that the largest response is This Is Us, meaning that it's complicated and it's probably not going the way you envision. So that's good to know. But the second, though, is very promising, that we have some MacGyvers out there that you guys have been able to pull together using paper clips and pens and pulling something pretty remarkable. So that's pretty good to know, too. So thank you guys for participating in that. This was not approved by NIDLR with NACL, so it's not an official polling question, but thank you guys for doing that. At least gives me a sense of where things are. So let's start to go into the actual, well, how do we make this work? And so the states are going to give great examples, and I'm excited about that, but I wanted to maybe give you a different sense of how this could work. And it kind of maybe shifts a little bit, because a lot of times we just think, well, there's an ADRC somewhere in our state, how do we partner with them? And I'd really like for you to start to think about, well, this is maybe not a one-time event. And how can I start to embed lifespan respite kind of concepts and resources across the entire access system? And so that means that any state and local infrastructure, the no wrong door access organizations, or state leadership. Now, you may be in a state like New York or Nevada where the ADRCs are clearly designated, and that's great. Those are easy examples. But there's more than just that to be able to embed yourself in an access system. So I'd like to take each one of these and just kind of share with you different ways that I think collaboration can occur. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little about infrastructure, and it's kind of a strange word. So I wanted to give you a little kind of an analogy. And so before the call that got started, I actually sat down with Victoria, and I asked her, if you were having a family reunion, and it could be anywhere in the world, and you don't have to worry about travel expenses, all of that will be covered, where would you pick? Where would you want to have the family reunion? So she thought about it for a little bit, and she said the islands, Bali Islands off Indonesia. That's where she would like to go. So I said, okay, we can work with that. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk about some of the infrastructure that's required for this flight that's going to be involved. And so when it comes to booking a flight, Victoria's family is going to have multiple options. Some are going to actually pick up the phone and they're going to make their reservation. Others are going to be sitting at a computer and they're going to purchase their tickets from the computer. Others are going to actually make the reservations through their smartphone, just try to do that through an app. Others might actually prefer making their reservation on-site or speaking with someone directly from the airlines. Others might actually use a travel agent to help coordinate all the details on their behalf. They just don't want to touch it. But regardless of the approach, there would be a management information system that really helps capture the reservation and all the preferences in terms of any changes that are made. Now, for airlines, there are multiple advantages of having this coordinated access system. It helps with outreach and marketing, helps with customer service, creating a positive experience, provides flexibility for the consumer, helps with security, helps with follow-up if something goes wrong. I mean, keeping a flight to Bali, this is a 24-hour flight. So on average from DC. And so a lot can happen over that time, a lot of layovers, follow-up's a critical function. So the main thing I'm trying to show here is look at all the infrastructure that's needed for just a 24-hour flight. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things we mentioned earlier is that 70% of Americans who reach 65 are going to need some form of long-term service supports for an average of 3 years. And so if you're going to translate this into a flight, this is like going on a 26,280-hour flight with tons of transfers. And so that sounds pretty scary. And so the thing is, if we have all that infrastructure just for a 24-hour flight, shouldn't we expect the same for a flight like this in terms of accessing long-term care? And so if we go to the next slide, one of the things I wanted to be able to kind of convey to you is there a way to embed some of the lifespan activities or your organization with the actual infrastructure? And so on the next slide, it breaks down some of these activities. And so there's actually specific functions that are occurring in an access system. And so even if it's not, let's say, a designated ADRC, some of the questions you could ask are, is there a way to partner with a broader awareness and outreach campaign that the state access system is doing? Is there a way to partner with state and local consumer portals or databases? To what extent are you embedded in there? Is there a way to participate in ongoing INR training, information referral, or INA? There's one-on-one counseling, whether it's called options counseling or person-centered counseling or care transitions. To what extent are they aware of Lifespan Respite programs? Are individuals that are doing application assistance, are they aware? Also, there's been a recent push around person-centered counseling training. And so if that is occurring, to what extent are you maybe embedded in that part, but to what extent, since you're doing access functions as well, are you being asked to participate in that training, or do you want to participate in that training? And so these are just some of the infrastructure pieces that I wanted you guys just to think about when you hear about partnering. We're going to talk about the governance administration structure in a little bit, but just those first three functions, sometimes those can be overlooked, and so I just wanted to call those out to your attention. So the next area is this idea of access organizations. You're going to get two great examples from New York and Nevada today, so you're probably most familiar with this kind of coordination. So I won't go in a lot of detail, but I did want to share with you one of the things that we do put in front of ADRC no wrong door access organizations when we start to talk about partnerships. And it's just as an FYI, I'm not saying you have to go through this, but I just want to give you a sense of what we ask them to do in terms of their mindset. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see the screen. It's kind of a coin. It's just a depiction of Janus, and it's this god of gates and doorways. And it's this idea of depicting two faces, one face looking out, one face looking in. So it's in opposite directions. And one of the things that we do when we're working with ADRC organizations is we ask them, what does a good partner look like? And so we go through that exercise, and usually a whole list of ideas starts to come about, and they start to ask questions. And so if we can go to the next slide. And so we'll go through that and ask them that, but then immediately following that, it starts to slow down. We say, well, what do you look like? Why would someone want to partner with you? And it immediately changes the conversation, but then they do start to think, okay, what assets, what strengths am I bringing to this relationship or partnerships? And so I only share this with you because it may be something that you may want to think about as you're looking to partner with ADRCs. That first question is really easy to kind of, go get into and answer, what does a good partner look like? But then what do you look like in terms of what can I bring? It's just a little different angle. And so I wanted to throw that out to you. And so we go to the next slide. This is just a small depiction of some of the organizations that we see as part of a state access system. And I'm going to call two of them real briefly, but I go back to one of the original points I made in the beginning is I think Lifespan Respite grantees can and maybe should see themselves as part of this. With the access functions that you're doing, you really are playing a critical role in coordinating services. And so the two I'm going to call out is a collaboration we're doing with the Veterans Health Administration and another one related to faith-based organizations. But first, with the Veteran-Directed Program, this is a consumer direction or participant-directed program. It's a partnership between the VA Medical Center and a local aging and disability organization. It could be an area agency on aging, a Center for Independent Living, or an ADRC. And currently, it's available at 62 of the 153 VA medical centers. And so 120 ADRCs are participating in. And so the key function that's being delivered is around person-centered counseling, and then the veteran gets to control their budget and direct services. But Lifespan Respite is a critical component that the VA recognizes and needs. And so this, I think, is a window, an area that I think stronger collaboration can occur. And so the next slide, I think, is a map to at least start to show where this is happening. I think actually two new sites actually came on board recently. So I think North Carolina and another spot in Missouri have come on board. So this is one area you may want to start to look at in terms of what's a tangible program or service that we can start to collaborate in. And so I wanted to call that out. The next I wanted to kind of just talk about, I do recognize, I've worked with Victoria and she champions and is always advocating for increased funding, and so I recognize that these grant dollars are small. So how can we make these grant dollars go further? And so one of the areas really is how do we start to work with volunteers and also maybe other organizations that utilize volunteers to try to make it go further. And so this is just to call out that we're starting to see more increased attention around using volunteers around religious organization, knowing that 1 out of 3 volunteers is actually at a religious organization. 42% of individuals that are volunteering are, at a religious organization are over 65. And across all education levels, volunteers are most likely to volunteer in a religious organization. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention in terms of some of the data and trends we're seeing. So next, I did want to talk about state leadership. And this goes to that idea of the second question of, I know what a good partner looks like, but what do I look like? And so for this, it's a little bit different because the strategies to partner with state leadership in North Carolina may be different than in Washington. But I want to share a couple with you that I see that are out there right now, but that you may have many others, and you have others probably even on this call. But if we can go into the state leadership, in the no wrong door system key elements, it calls out 4 key functions. And so one of those is this idea of a state governance and administration, and it's basically just a leadership team for a no wrong door system. And so if we go to the next slide, one of the areas that I think might be an area that you can look into is around no wrong door Medicaid administrative claiming. A couple of years ago, one of the key partners, CMS, put out guidance around administrative claiming to help access systems just sustain. The Balancing Center program was ending. How can we sustain these activities? And so a number of states are starting to see that Medicaid claiming makes a lot of sense. Even states that maybe are seeing not a lot of individuals that are eligible for Medicaid, it can still be very fruitful to participate in this. However, one of the things that has to be a part of this for it to work, almost the price of admission, is you need state or local dollars that are being spent for access functions. And so this is a map showing the states that are currently collecting as well as in the planning phase. Now, one of the advantages I think that Lifespan Respite grantees could bring, since you are doing access functions, and some of those access functions might be supported by state or local dollars, I think you could create an incentive why some of these states may want to partner with you because they are looking for that. They're getting more and more scarce, but it might be a strength that you have as a grantee to be able to use to leverage why your broader statewide access system really should be paying attention to what you're doing. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. We go to the next slide. The other area that we're starting to see something to look at is really making the business case for why a coordinated access system makes sense. And so we feel like there are a lot of good reasons in terms of it's more cost effective. This is where people want to live. We know early access to HCBS is starting to be just associated with less expenses downstream. And so one of the things that's just announced this month, in fact, we just did a call on it an hour ago, there's a new funding opportunity that's been put out. And so this is for an open competition for all states. And one of the requirements of the funding opportunity, and you'll see it on the next slide, is that states would identify an evidence-based or evidence-informed intervention that could help produce a positive return on investment. And so we know that we're starting to see more examples of evidence-based or evidence-informed respite care programs. And so I think this is another potential area that could help get you in the door with your state access system if you are having a challenge with it. Because this is a grant that's currently live. States haven't even submitted their letters of intent. And so this is something you may want to reach out to your ADRC no wrong door partners in terms of if this is something that interests you. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to wrap up with this last story. And I shared this recently, but I found it kind of compelling. And it was really around this idea of not giving up. And so I have the ultimate respect for the work that you do and the work that caregivers do. And so the story is that Benjamin Franklin, in his autobiography, really was trying to convince people this idea that a light is really powerful. But he couldn't get anybody to persuaded by the words he was using. And so what he did was he went out and he bought a lamp, he kind of fixed it up, cleaned it up, put a candle in there, and he put it, every night he'd go to the end of his street and he would light it. And he kept doing that night after night, trying to show people the value of what a light can be. And so over time, what happened was people started to see the value, they saw the example, and it grew from there. And so for me, I really believe that the work that we're doing is kind of like that light. So we need to just continue to keep going out there and lighting it, even when days it doesn't feel like it. And so I just wanted to thank you for the work you do and the time you gave to listen to me. And I'd really encourage you to give your attention to the next speakers because it's really exciting work that they're going to tell you about. So thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was really a stimulating and very informative presentation. I know it got me thinking about a lot of things. Of course, we do want to hear now from our two state grantees in Nevada and New York who are going to demonstrate to us how they've partnered with their state's No Wrong Door system as it continues to evolve to begin to address the needs of family caregivers for respite. So Cheyenne, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Jill and Joseph. So my name is Cheyenne Pasquale. I'm the planning chief here at Nevada Aging and Disability Services Division, and I work in the Planning, Advocacy, and Community Services Unit. My goal today really is I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Nevada and our No Wrong Door system so that you have some context. And then what I'm going to do is kind of just talk about each of our Lifespan Respite grants that we've had in Nevada and how we've integrated or partnered with the No Wrong Door ADRC system here. Next slide, please. So Nevada is quite a large state in terms of land mass. It's 10 times larger than Maryland, but we only have about 24 people per square mile. In terms of our population, our three largest counties, we have Las Vegas in Clark County with 2.1 million people, Reno in Washoe County with 446,000 people, and then our other big population hub is Elko with a whopping 51,000 people. So we have a lot of people concentrated kind of in the three corners of our state, and then a lot of people kind of dispersed throughout the state. I think our total population for our state is around 2.8 or 2.9 million people, so a lot of disbursement. Next slide, please. In terms of our demographics, we have just over 600,000 individuals that are Medicaid recipients. It's about 21% of our population. With nearly 15% of our population is 65 and older. 8.5% have a disability. 15% of our population is considered in poverty, and we have quite a large veteran population at around 8%. So next slide, please. In terms of our No Wrong Door system, we call it Nevada Care Connection. We established the system in 2005, and today we have 4 actual resource centers serving all 17 counties. The core services offered by our resource centers is resource and service navigation. It's also, you might have heard the term options counseling or person-centered counseling. In Nevada, we chose to call it resource and service navigation. We also offer veterans-directed home and community-based services in the Elko region. We have a care transitions program that was just piloted here in Las Vegas. And then we have caregiver support as a integrated key service for our resource centers. As we look towards the future with Nevada Care Connection and our No Wrong Door system, we're really kind of revamping the model here in Nevada and looking at more of an expanded network model and less focused on the actual resource centers. So that's a little bit of the context. So let's talk about the grants. So we received our first Lifespan Respite grant in 2009, and this grant, by the time we got this grant, ADRCs had been in Nevada for about 4 years, and we had 3 ADRCs at the time, and each ADRC really worked independent of each other. We were just starting to have conversations to bring the ADRCs together to align processes and things like that. And so this Lifespan Respite Grant was really one of our first statewide initiatives for the ADRCs. And so what we did is we focused on providing training to the resource centers on how to have the conversation around respite and how to engage caregivers in that conversation to help them recognize not only what respite is, but the value in respite. In addition, our No Wrong Door system was had kind of launched version 1.0 of our No Wrong Door website, which was used to provide general information about different types of services. And so under this first Lifespan Respite grant, what we did is we used the existing platform for our No Wrong Door website, and we integrated a website that was specific to respite. This original respite website had an overview of respite. It had the online module, the online version of our information and referral for respite, and it had a caregiver self-assessment that could help caregivers determine risk for burnout. And then they could link out to information and other websites to help access services. In this grant, we, with just that initial training that we did with the ADRCs, we saw a 60% increase in referrals to respite through the ADRCs. And then, of course, we had the respite webpage, and then we had the training module that we were able to continue on, and we still use today. Next slide, please. So then we received a grant in 2012, and really, in terms of No Wrong Door, we utilized this grant to strengthen our website with additional information about caregiver supports. We expanded our online training library for caregivers to include a module that was, it was the intended audience is caregivers, and it talked about respite and how to access respite and things like that. We also expanded that training to include modules on that taught caregivers kind of the basics of personal care. And we added a section that included the models of respite out there and how you could get respite in Nevada. And this was really in line with our efforts through No Wrong Door to better define our caregiver support protocols through our ADRCs. So in the 2012 grant, we were really looking at planning, like how can we integrate caregiver support into the ADRCs. So in 2014, we were, by that time we knew that we wanted caregiver support to be a core function in our No Wrong Door system. We had done the training for the resource centers, we had integrated information into our website, but we really wanted to pilot a protocol that would offer assistance to caregivers specifically. You can think of it really as specialized person-centered counseling for caregivers, really, is what the idea we had in our minds. And so what we did in this grant is we piloted a evidence-based intervention known as the BRI Care Consultation Program in our ADRC in Southern Nevada. So the ADRC received the training and became licensed to offer BRI care consultation as part of their ADRC grant. This intervention is a telephone-based intervention that focuses on empowering caregivers to access the services they need and to access the assistance that need. So this was a really successful pilot. We were able to really see how individual coming into the resource center, maybe for help for their loved one, but then asking a couple additional questions to help get them over to the care consultation program, it just really worked kind of seamlessly. And so outside of the 2014 grant, we were able to, just this year, we were able to expand the BRI care consultation intervention into a second ADRC in Northern Nevada. In addition, the tail end of the 2014 grant, well, let me back up for a minute. Through our No Wrong Door efforts, we had been partnering with the state Medicaid agency through the Balancing Incentives Program to help accomplish some of those goals. And in 2016, through the BIP, we launched a statewide rebranding campaign for Nevada Care Connection. And so then at the tail end of the 2014 grant, we capitalized on those original efforts to create an outreach campaign that was specifically targeted to caregivers and really focused on helping caregivers to connect to Nevada Care Connection. And next slide, please. So here we are now all the way in 2017. Well, really now we're in 2018, I suppose. But we're in our current project now, the latest grant. And this grant is really working to strengthen our respite coalition. But more importantly, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Nevada No Wrong Door system is going through some significant transformations also. And we're focusing on realigning state policies to streamline access to services and really looking at ways to expand our resource and service navigation. And this respite grant is, at least the way we see it, is an opportunity for us to demonstrate how well this can work. One of our biggest goals in this grant is to work with our sister agencies to realign the data that we're collecting in order to paint the picture about Nevada caregivers, but also to consolidate funding sources so that we can ensure that we have funding distributed across the lifespan. And we're looking at new ways of helping individuals access respite services through our self-directed voucher program. So it's going to be sort of a, I like to think of it as like a mini pilot of how we can realign our state policies to better serve our families. And then the next slide is just a little summary. So we kind of started with some basic infrastructure, some training, and then in 2012 we expanded information. We identified kind of a plan in how we could really move forward between our Lifespan Respite program and our No Wrong Door. In 2014, we were able to really integrate the two with the BRI care consultation program, and then now looking forward, really focusing on those systemic changes and those policy changes that can lead to our lasting success. So that is all that I have. Thank you. I'll turn it over to New York.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Go ahead, New York.
Good afternoon to everybody, and really want to thank you for the opportunity to describe some of our story and journey in New York with you. We really want to focus our presentation on how we're using our infrastructure that really uses partnerships. So even for this presentation, we're doing that. So there are three of us presenting from New York today. I'm Jennifer Rosenbaum. I'm an assistant director in the Division of Policy Planning, Program and Outcomes at the State Office for the Aging in New York. And I've been involved in the Lifespan Respite initiative in New York since the onset. Dina Prest is our program director for Lifespan Respite, and she also is our program lead for all of our caregiving and other respite programs. And Doris Green will be presenting from our New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition. So you get to hear from some members of our core team today. So I want to just very briefly talk about what we're going to do. We really thought it was worth highlighting the partnership that we have put together for our Lifespan Respite initiative, that we are going to talk about some specific initiatives that we use in New York that connects our New York Connect system, which is our ADRC, and our Lifespan Respite Services Access Initiative, because we want to really focus on where the intersects occur and where there are opportunities to collaborate. So as we go through our presentation today, we're going to describe some things that we've done to try to help us look at our relatively large state across all different types of partners to gain a better understanding about the respite services that are available, some things that we do to offer access to the respite services listings, and then get into some details about the ways that we go about making some of those connections. So we'll spend some time really focusing on our overview and structure, and then share some of our content with you as well. So I would like to start with a bit of history and overview for New York and how we got to where we are today. We formally started with Lifespan Respite in 2010. Because of the diversity of caregiving responsibilities and caregiver needs for respite and related services, New York, as have other states, has long recognized the importance of establishing and strengthening the idea of a caregiving and respite coalition, the coalition to help identify and address needs across the state and across the lifespan. As a recommendation in 2009 of the New York State Family Caregiver Council, which included caregivers, community advocates, academic experts in caregiving issues, and New York State government agencies, the New York State Office for the Aging applied for and was awarded a Lifespan Respite grant in 2010. And we have a Lifespan Respite core team, and we work together to identify the primary aim for the grant that we initiated in 2010 and in some form has continued through the cycles that we've had for this grant. So I thought it was really important to just walk through how we focused our work. One component is to expand and enhance respite services across age and disability groups. Second is to improve statewide dissemination and coordination of information about respite care. And thirdly, to provide, supplement, and improve access to and quality of respite care services. And for us, that is the core. It's not the only thing that we do, but that really provides the core for how we're trying to focus our work and continue to move forward. We currently are in our third Lifespan Respite grant that began in 2017. And while the specific objectives of our current grant are updated, these overall aims do hold true. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our core team. For us, this has been a really important foundational feature for how we've conducted our work and to help us achieve our goals and objectives of the initiative. The New York State Office for the Aging is the award recipient, and we also have policy and program development related roles and to provide that kind of support. The New York Connect's No Wrong Door system, our ADRC, is a partner for access to caregiving and respite services. The Monroe County Office for the Aging provides administrative support and also liaison with our area agencies on aging. And Lifespan of Greater Rochester is a community-based organization with the capacity to implement programs and services with local and statewide reach. And with that, they host the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, which is highlighted here, and we really want to focus attention with it due to its pivotal role in focusing attention and the actions that we take in this regard on caregiving and respite specifically through this initiative and beyond this initiative. The core team has remained committed to the work and to build on the activities that we have been initiating through this project. And this interdisciplinary partnership is memorialized in a memorandum of agreement that was required for grant funding, but which we really use as the platform for our work. And I thought it might be useful to highlight the memorandum of agreement very briefly because it does memorialize, and we've included that with each of the grant cycles that we had. And I just wanted to highlight two sections in particular that we have in our formal memorandum of agreement among all of these partners. One is, with this snapshot, you can see that we include the goals of our programs and the objectives that we have. And so in this instance, you can see the objectives that were listed so that it's clear to all partners that what we have in front of us is to move in the same direction so that we can achieve these goals. And I really wanted to focus a little bit on Section 4 and the agreement and just the top part of that, which is that the parties agree to work collaboratively and recognize that each has specific responsibilities to be carried out in order to meet the objectives. And of course, it goes on to say more, but we have it in that document in that way so that we can both refer to it and also remember that we take those responsibilities very seriously and it doesn't involve all members of our team. So with that, I really would like to turn to some of the initiatives that we have that connect our New York Connects No Wrong Door system, which is our ADRC, and Lifespan Respite, with a focus on respite services access, which is really, it provides the context for what we're focusing on here today. So I'd like to first provide a brief overview of the New York Connect system in New York State. I just thought that would be helpful just to get us oriented. The New York Connect system it serves as the No Wrong Door hub that connects partner agencies to better serve individuals across service systems with long-term services and support needs. Navigating long-term services and support systems can be challenging for individuals, for caregivers, families, and even for professionals. Long-term services and supports are administered by multiple agencies and providers, are supported by numerous funding sources, and differ depending on a person's age, income, disability, and other factors. And to respond to these challenges, New York State established New York Connects in 2006 and continued to expand its development state as the hub of the No Wrong Door system through the Balancing Incentive Program, similar to what Nevada had spoken about a few moments ago. The purpose of the New York Connects program, which is established under Section 203(8) of New York State Elder Law, is to provide consistent, comprehensive, locally based information on long-term services and supports to consumers, caregivers, and families to help them make informed choices. And I think that's important to note because this really comes from that person-centered approach, no matter your reason for looking at what you might need to do to gain support. And through this, we are looking to provide consistent, comprehensive, and locally based information on long-term services and supports, including respite, as I noted. So I'd like to really focus in two ways on some of the things where we have initiatives that connect our New York Connects No Wrong Door system and Lifespan Respite. I'd like to really talk a little bit about the Lifespan Respite Think Group that we instituted when we first started working on Lifespan Respite, and then spend a little time looking at our New York Connects resource directory and our respite services listing. We thought that would be helpful to highlight for you today. And I'm going to start with the Think Group. So back in 2011, so as part of our 2010 grant, it was the first grant that we had received in New York State, and it really helped us focus attention on caregiving and on particularly on respite. And we thought the first thing we really need to do is think about this, so we formed a group and we called it a Think Group. It was formed to help us really discuss the definition of respite and to develop an inventory of respite services in New York State. The Think Group included interested parties from the Aging Network, the Disability Network, and from all regions of New York. The Think Group members represented agencies that serve older adult caregivers, young caregivers, people with developmental disabilities, mental health needs, children with complex needs, veterans, as well as provider, academic, and other groups. And through the efforts of the Think Group, New York successfully undertook this inventory and produced a matrix of respite services in several major service delivery systems in New York, including aging, developmental disabilities, mental health, and children with cross-systems needs. This matrix was a major component of the inventory process and helped our core team recognize the variance of available respite services across systems in New York. These activities were expanded early on, and we added respite services available through the Veterans Administration, the Medicare Hospice Respite Benefit, and respite available through provider groups and associations. And this information has been made available on the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition website and through the New York Connects resource directory where appropriate. So those are descriptive materials on the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition website, and in the directory there are actually service listings where it's appropriate. Gaps in respite services across the age and disability spectrum also were identified. And to help address the gaps that were identified through the Think Group, the core team researched volunteer respite options and faith-based respite options, as well as expansion of consumer-directed respite using caregiver funding through the Aging Network, which helps frame the work we continue to develop to this day through the Lifespan Respite initiative. So that really was foundational for us. The core team has been working with agencies that focus on respite for kinship caregivers, caregivers of people with disabilities, and caregivers of those with serious medical conditions to identify cost-effective respite models. So this slide is really just as a way to showcase that the think group, the idea behind it was really to think about how we look at, identify, coordinate, and discuss some of the variations of what respite might look like depending on the system, the source of funding, et cetera. The think group itself was by interest and by invitation, and as noted, it was a broad cross-section that met for monthly for 9 months and then developed these materials so that we really wanted to have them completed within the first full year of our first Lifespan Respite grant. So its purpose was to explore how different systems define and utilize respite. The desired outcome was a common language about respite, the words caregiver and care recipient, so that when we were discussing these things, we felt like we were discussing the same things. And the process was through monthly calls, presentations, information gathering, materials development, and the result was the matrix that I described just a moment ago. So that is just a quick highlight of what we did with our think group, and the point there was really that we did spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we were being inclusive and at least identifying the types of things that we needed to be considering in the complexities of what comprises respite. And that was important as we moved to, okay, so how do we look at respite services listings? And I thought it would be useful for us to take a look at our New York Connects resource directory, and just by way of example to show some of the respite resource listings. But I really want to describe the resource directory a little bit first. Through the Balancing Incentive Program, the New York Connects overall went through a major expansion and overhaul, and part of that was our New York Connects resource directory. It actually went through 2 redesigns during the Balancing Incentive Program period. The first was in 2015, and then we did an upgraded overhaul in 2017. This was a significant interagency effort to expand the quantity and the qualities of listings that are contained within the resource directory that are available to the public, and also for the use by the local New York Connect staff that work with the people that contact them. So that work included the way that we would go about looking at from an interagency perspective on how we would expand the quantity and quality of the listings. The local New York Connects offices are responsible largely for what they put into the data system. And then through this expansion, we also now have monthly data feeds through several state agencies, our New York State Department of Health, Office of Mental Health, Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and our Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services. And at the local level, our local New York Connects offices are responsible for inputting and maintaining provider information about aging network services and other long-term services and supports that are inclusive and beyond. The data feeds are very specific to those agencies and what they oversee. So the redesign included a complete review of how we present the information, and then at the back end, how you would pull forward listings. And in this particular case, thought it would be good to take a look at what we did through this updated website so that you can see what that would look like for respite services. So this is a screenshot of our front portal page for the New York Connects resource directory. And the hero image that is here, just so that you know, it moves. So sometimes this is the image that you see, but it really reflects different individuals so that when you come to this page, you might see someone who looks like you when you're searching for a listing. What was really great in what we did with the redesign and part of the interagency work that we did is we identified that there are 3 different methods that people might need to search a directory. Click on it and it will come up. So the Know What You Need category is a keyword search. The Help Finding the Right services is a self-guided search. And the What to Explore options is a category search, and the categories are basic needs, healthcare services and supports, income support and employment, community engagement, and legal and government services. So you may have different ways that you may need to look at this, but in this case, just for purposes of our example today, we're going to say that we know what we need, and what we need is respite. So in that instance, what you would do is you would type in the word, you would click on know what you need, you type in the word respite, you'd put in your location, and then you would hit the search key. And what that would do is provide returns for you that you can further drill down if you wish to. You can save them, you can print them, there are things that you can do to email them, but it gives you the opportunity to focus in on what you may be looking for with respite. You can sort the listings in a variety of different ways, and so what's really nice about that is it really starts to help you with what you may be looking for in terms of this category. And this is just an example of what a return looks like. So this is, it includes the name of the service, a little bit of a description, an address, and a phone number. And you can then contact that organization directly, or you could use that information for follow-up that you might want to do with a New York Connect information and assistance specialist and a variety of other things. So we thought it was valuable just to take a moment to show you what that looks like. It is robust. There are over 70,000 listings in this directory, and many thousands of those are tied to respite. And now what we'd like to do is turn to Dina, who is going to really go in depth about making the connection between the New York Connect system and our respite for caregivers and families across the age and disability spectrum.
Great. Thanks, Jen. So what I'm going to do for you today, hopefully, is just to give you guys some very specific examples of how our ADRC here in New York Connect, is actually operationalizing and, serving caregivers at the local level, both in supporting them and connecting them to respite services. Jen just did a very thorough job of highlighting our New York Connect resource directory. So I'm not going to spend much time on that, but I thought it was important to include here because it is instrumental in working with caregivers here in New York State and, providing resources for them and depending upon what they're looking for. So here in New York, we do take a unified approach with our New York Connect program where each of our local New York Connects in each county do have to follow program standards. And within those standards, they do have to have a long-term care council. And the membership of this council does have to represent the diversity of individuals from the populations in need of long-term services and support. For example, the underserved, culturally diverse populations, limited English proficiency, and various income levels. So through the long-term care councils, they have to meet at least 3 times a year, and a lot is learned, and also a lot of advisory capacity is done through the council with working at identifying and analyzing the emerging community needs and gaps in services. So, that is one, I would say, one thing that each of, that every single program has to have within their county that continues to build the work and the collaboration amongst all of the partners at the local level. In addition, we follow kind of a coordinated process, and I thought it would be good to give an example, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, getting contacted by a caregiver, maybe through the ARCH website in particular. This is what happened with this example, where they did reach out to us and was seeking some information about what might be available to them for respite in caring for their mom. And so I had advised them to contact our local New York Connect program. And so we get confirmation that the process works because for this particular caregiver, she did reach back out to me and thanked me for connecting her to New York Connects and how very helpful they were in providing information about various respite providers in her area that she could choose from, and successfully was able to have her mom attend a social adult day program that her mother just thoroughly enjoyed. And so not only did we hear from the daughter, but also the social adult day program reached out to thank us for the referral. So we really do get confirmation in knowing that, you know, sending our caregivers to New York Connects and having New York Connects assist them with accessing respite services is successful. So it's nice to get that confirmation back. So I also wanted to talk just about, you know, how we continue to support the collaboration that happens at the local level, where here at the state office, you know, we continually provide training ongoing, and so every month we have caregiver coordinator calls is what we call them, but you know, oftentimes they're in a webinar format, and we do bring in you know, special speakers to talk on particular topics. And every month we have Doris Green, you know, who shares things that are going on out of the coalition with different initiatives, so that our network is fully aware of ways that they can get involved with some of those initiatives, and, you know, different events that are happening. So we also like to invite our New York Connect staff as well to keep them informed about what is happening. So that's one example of how, you know, we continue that collaboration. In addition, we do annual caregiver forums. We try to hold them on an annual basis, and every year we invite our New York Connect staff to attend them. We think that that's also a very good way to continue to support and build the collaboration, you know, at the local level amongst the staff. And then Doris does a wonderful job with hosting an annual conference through the Caregiver and Respite Coalition that, in addition, we extend an invitation to our New York Connect staff as well as other staff in our network that are helping with serving caregivers. So those are some examples of ways that we here at the state level try to just continue to, you know, support that collaboration and help to build and strengthen it. Now I wanted to talk just a little bit about some innovative respite strategies that we became aware of, as I mentioned earlier, about the requirement of a long-term care council in each of our local New York Connects programs. We do get reports that they need to send to us at the state level. So in reading the reports on, you know, some of the gaps in services and different strategies that they're implementing to try to address them, we learn a lot about what they're doing. And so I thought it would be good to try to highlight today one in particular county that shared with us some of the things that they've implemented that seem to be working well within their New York Connects program. So for one New York Connects program here in New York, and there may be others that are doing it, but one in particular reported this to us, that they have started to use what they call caregiver discharge planning folders that they disseminate to discharge planners at the local hospitals and nursing facilities. And, you know, the goal is to get them in the hands of the caregivers. And if the caregivers are interested, a New York Connect specialist will meet with the patient and the caregiver at the facility to begin a person-centered options counseling process and also provide any sort of application assistance that may be needed. In addition, this program has also had success in working with the local hospital to secure office space so that they can co-locate their staff to have a New York Connect specialist available a few hours a week right at the hospital. New York Connects there, and in many of our locations, it is a requirement that they offer home visits if needed and appropriate for the family circumstance. And this particular program also has partnered with the Department of Social Services to begin implementing what they call a 48-hour program, which is run through their rural first responders. So the first responders have all been trained to assist when they are called into a home and they've identified that there is an emergency situation with a caregiver involved, so that they can contact the New York Connect staff to assist the family so that the caregiver actually will have a short-term plan in the event of emergency. So the discharge planners have continued to report back to our program that the packets seem to be working very well. And I guess the first responders that have been trained, this has started to expand into neighboring counties because they've seen such a success from it. So I thought it was important to just highlight a couple of the, innovative strategies that are happening here in New York State. And I just wanted to, lastly mention about how the REST initiative here has just expanded so greatly, and we are now, in over half the state has REST available, where we're using volunteers to provide respite, both in the home and in group respite, which I'm happy that we have Doris Green here to talk more about the details on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Doris so that she can explain a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you. Doris here. Bear with me. I've lost my internet connection, so I can't see the slides.
So we're on your first slide, Doris.
Yeah, okay, great. So we embarked on two major initiatives over the past year which focus on the volunteer respite programs. So first is REST, as Dina was talking about, Respite Education and Support Tools. It's an evidence-based, professionally designed train-the-trainer course that provides respite education to those who go out and train others to be REST companions, aka respite care workers, volunteers, or providers. The Train-the-Trainer course is an intensive, interactive 2-day program which provides new trainers with materials that they need to conduct their own training. This is appropriate for senior services, healthcare organizations, area agencies on aging, faith-based organizations, adult daycare, and other social service organizations. REST also includes 2 other training options, both that we're using in this project. So the REST Companion Training course is an 8-hour course that provides education directly to people who serve care receivers one-on-one. And then the REST Essentials Training course is a 4-hour program that prepares volunteers or paid respite workers to provide respite in a supervised group setting such as adult day programs or congregate drop-off respite programs. One of our focuses with this effort is supporting faith communities in opening such programs, and we have many of them using our REST at this time. Each REST program is interactive and highly detailed to prepare individuals to care for people across the lifespan who have chronic health care needs or disabilities. From October 16, 2016 through December 31st, 2017, the Coalition created a significant presence across the state by recruiting and training and supporting REST trainers. This movement began with the vision of Coalition staff to support caregivers across the state, starting with 2 master trainers in 2016 who would then be responsible for propagating the train-the-trainer model. It then expanded with an addition of a 3rd trainer in March 2017 and 3 additional master trainers in October for a total of 6 master trainers in the state. This June, New York will be the first state to embark on regional training, which will allow 2 Coalition staff to be able to train master trainers throughout the state and in the northeast areas of the country, significantly reducing the cost of growing the trainer workforce. Our ultimate goal is to have REST trainers in every county and master trainers in every region of the state, and as Dina said, we're a little over halfway there. Next slide, please. Statewide respite. Okay, thanks. A statewide respite mini-grant program was instituted in September 2016, and awards were made to 9 applicants, 4 of which budgeted specifically for implementing REST training. The mini-grant award period end date on August 31st, 2017, and efforts focused upon ongoing communication, data collection, and working with sites for sustainability. The total number of respite hours provided through December 31st, 2017 was over 3,000 hours. So we continue to work toward a sustainable network of respite options for caregivers in New York, and that's about it. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Dina.
Okay, thanks, Doris. I appreciate you giving us more detail on our REST initiative here in New York State. So that really concludes, I guess, what New York is doing, and we're hoping that you learned a bit about the details and the examples of what we provided. So I think with that, I am going to turn it back to Jill.
Thank you all very much for really wonderful presentations. We only have, unfortunately, a few minutes left for questions. I haven't seen any come in on the chat box, but I did want to let you know that we can take questions now. If you prefer to speak to us your question, you can call in on the number that you see on your screen. We can take them either way, through the chat box or calling in. And even though we only have a few minutes, we'll leave that open and see if anyone would like to ask a question of any of our speakers.
Jill, this is Joseph. It's not a question, but a comment. I really wish there was a way we could take Nevada and New York to Iceland so that they could tell their story.
That would be really wonderful. Really amazing, yes. Very amazing examples of what can be done with a small amount of lifespan respite funding by leveraging and partnering with your No Wrong Door system. It's truly really amazing.
It is two MacGyver examples for sure.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot with a little.
Well, if no one has a question, I actually have one quick one for you, Joseph. Oh, actually, here's one. I'd rather it come from one of our participants. This question's for New York about their caregiver discharge packets. It's a great idea that we'd love to explore. How did you make the connections with the discharge planners? And was there any resistance, or were they open to the partnership off the bat? And that's from Megan Cluth in Colorado.
Hi, Megan. It's Gina.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great question, and what I would like to do really is to, to bring the question to the local program just so that I can be sure as far as any challenges that they had. But I do know that, they work very closely with the discharge planners as far as, being involved with the Long-Term Care Council. And we have Jessica Perk with us today, too, who actually represents our New York Connect programs. I don't know if you have anything to add in regards to that, Jess, with discharge.
No, just that discharge planning coordination is something that a lot of the different local programs try to accomplish. So it's probably something that across the board they've been able to implement some strategies for. So we think it's a good question to take back to the locals.
And I will say that I know when I was involved with New York Connects, with the options counseling, person-centered counseling, I mean, that was a big piece of it was really connecting with the discharge planners so that, they could get connected to the clients, care receivers in need of services and caregivers, early on before heading home. So,
and this is Jennifer. I would just add that if there is that kind of interest and we do the follow-up here, we can then connect back with Jill, if that's okay with you, Jill, if the locality is comfortable with sharing that information.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, if no one else has a question, I have a million questions. So I have one quick one I have several quick ones, but I'll ask one. Joseph, on that Medicaid claiming information, you certainly made the important point about the Lifespan grant making themselves known to the No Wrong Door System or the ADRC to get counted as part of that Medicaid claiming process. But is there a way that the Lifespan Respite program itself, if they are doing, even though they're important partners in their No Wrong Door system, if they're doing their own counseling and connection with family caregivers to connect them to respite services, can they directly claim those Medicaid administrative funds to stay in their own work?
It's possible that the desire is there, but they wouldn't be able to do it directly. In fact, even the operating agencies, such as the State Unit on Aging, they could not do it by themselves either. You do need the state Medicaid agency to lead the effort, and they have to coordinate with the CMS regional office. And so they have to modify their kind of allocation plan. They're the leaders of it, but then they work with the operating agency to make it work. But so no, unfortunately, they couldn't do that on their own. You'd have to work with a state entity. But we have seen it. When it works the way it's supposed to, the Medicaid agency works with their operating agency, and the operating agency works with the local access organizations. And the local organizations do the investment, do the time studies, do the tracking, submit that to the operating agency. They submit it to the Medicaid agency, and then they work through CMS to do the claiming. And then the funds then actually come back, actually can make their way all the way down to the local organization that did the tracking. So there's a lot of MOUs involved, but you cannot do it. Yeah, you can't do it by yourself.
Okay, that's a great clarification. Thank you very much.
If people are more interested, on the No Wrong Door website, we actually have a whole toolkit now devoted to helping states walk through the process.
Oh, wonderful. I'll make sure our networks have access to that information.
Okay, great.
I also had one other question around the range of age and disabilities that the No Wrong Door systems are focusing on. From the first lifespan respite state legislation that passed in Oregon in 1997, it was all ages and all disabilities with no phasing in from the get-go. And I know that, as you mentioned in your presentation, a lot of the ADRC started out serving the older populations and maybe adults with physical disabilities. Do you have a sense now of what percentage, it could be very rough, of the No Wrong Door systems ADRC programs across the country are now serving all ages and disabilities?
Yeah, it would be pretty dangerous to throw that percentage out there. The one benchmark though that we have used, it was just as a benchmark. We piloted it, but through the state scorecard effort that we did, that's funded by AARP and the Commonwealth Fund and SCAN Foundation, there are a set of indicators they used that states self-rated themselves. And one of the indicators is around population served. So that's probably the closest thing we have in terms of assessing state progress to access systems. But that survey, we do it every 3 years, or AARP does it every 3 years. So that is something that we're going to be hopefully using in the future, so that when you ask me that, I'll be able to just say, I'd be able to point you to that scorecard. But right now, I couldn't do it.
Okay, great. I mean, I know, for example, that Nevada, one of the great states on our call today, their ADRC was certainly being able to assist parents of children with disabilities from the very beginning. And it would be great information to have. And I think the extent to which Lifespan Respite grantees are partnering with their No Wrong Door systems or embedding some of their activities, that gives the No Wrong Door system an opportunity to have a door to other populations that they might not be currently serving. Lifespan Respite can help.
It's a great point, and they can actually help lead some states that may be just not sure where to go, or enhance a relationship maybe with the school system or something like that. So yeah, it's a great point.
Okay, last minute for any other questions. Call in or type in. I really, really thank you all, Jennifer, Doris, Dina, Cheyenne, and Joseph. Thank you so much for really excellent, thought-provoking presentations, and we're very grateful to have that information. I do want to remind our Lifespan Respite grantees and partners that we have a teleconference. The next call is scheduled for May 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and the topic will be the nuts and bolts of voucher respite. And it's going to be led by two of our wonderful grantees, Linda Porter from Lifespan Respite Washington and Ellie Billman from the Colorado Respite Coalition. So please join us for that if you're a grantee or partner. And don't forget, please respond to the email that you're going to get in a minute once you close out of the webinar, and let us know what you thought about today, and also give us any ideas that you have for topics in the future. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our presenters, and we will be sending you the link to the recorded webinar in the next couple of days. Thank you all.